All right, Garth, welcome to the Sipping Point.
Thanks for having me.
Awesome. Now, I have connected with you through Instagram, and I love your fun, down to earth videos on champagne, different bottles, different tips about champagne. But I noticed that you start a lot of the videos doing a shambong. So I wondered if maybe I don't have an exact shambong, but I have a similar device. Maybe we could start things off that way.
Let's do it. Why not? It seems
Let's
like
do it.
the right thing to do.
Yes, give us a lesson. So it's
I mean,
almost like ooh,
it
it's
makes a
ready,
mess always, no matter what you do. The lesson for this is always have a little serviette to clean it up when you make the
right?
mess. Yeah, that's
This
always
is
my
kind of like
tip.
a wine glass with a straw, but it'll
Yeah,
work.
I've never seen that, but I think it's gonna work.
All right,
Well,
cheers.
anyways, cheers. Having a little bit of fun.
Wow, delicious.
It really gets you going.
That's our jump start. Well,
Yeah.
great. I always love to start my interviews just learning people's origin story, as I call it, to wine, because most of
Mhm.
us didn't grow up wanting to be a sommelier and maybe didn't even know what it was till a certain point in our life. So, how did you come to this amazing job in wine and specifically champagne?
Yeah, I mean, it was a fairly long journey, but I was in college and I thought I was going to be a college professor. I was studying philosophy and English and sort of just started working in restaurants to pay bills as we do in college. And I saw all of the wine reps coming in and, they do a wine presentation for the staff and then they go sit at the bar and have a martini. And I thought, I could probably do that. And so it spiked my interest in wine, and throughout the years I sort of just started studying a little bit more and asking questions. And at one point I was working for a restaurant and I asked if I could volunteer to help because I was almost done with my studies in college and nowhere near becoming a professor in my head. It wasn't something I was prepared to do, so I was just trying to find a little bit of something to keep me busy. And I started volunteering and I had a clipboard and I was doing inventory. And that manager that was running the program just quit. And he said, the owner looked at me and goes, "You're the only person on staff that even knows what Merlot is. You're now the sommelier." And he handed me a business card like 3 days later that said Garth Hodgdon sommelier. I had to go home and look up the word. Had never heard it in my life. And then, long story short, that guy who I was working with in Sacramento at the time ended up in Yountville at Bouchon for Thomas Keller and called me out of the blue one day and said, "Hey, I need a somm. When can you start?" And so 2 weeks later, I was there and I worked for Bouchon in Yountville for 2.5 years as the head sommelier. I went to the
Wow.
French Laundry in Yountville. After that, I was there for 3.5 years, and then I spent a year at Per Se in New York as a sommelier. So I started off, in a small restaurant in Sacramento, and then I found myself, in Manhattan on the fourth floor in Columbus Circle, serving some of the best wine to, pair with some of the best food in the world. So um, that was sort of my journey into restaurants, and then fell in love with champagne and I started working for Krug. I was the national ambassador for Krug Champagne for 5 years. I traveled the country. I covered 40 states. I worked 320 days a year on the road, and that kind of burned me out after 5 years. And then I thought to myself, it's time to do something new. What do I want to do? I love champagne. And so my wife and I started a champagne import company. And now, 5 years later, with that, we've got a national club and we distribute in 20 states. And we have an online store and we drink champagne out of bongs on Tuesday morning.
I love it. This is a dream. I mean, if this doesn't inspire people, I don't know what will. And
Yeah.
how amazing that you really just did kind of fall into it
Hmm.
perfectly. And I have seen in your bio that you've since done training with the Court of Master Sommeliers and 45 seconds in the documentary Somm. That's something.
Yeah, 45, give or take. I'm not 100% sure. I never timed it. Um, but yes, I did study, and throughout my years working in restaurants, I ended up passing the advanced sommelier exam, and I took the master exam 4 or 5 times, sort of lose count. Those years blur a bit. But the first time I took it was in Dallas that year that they were filming the Somm movie, the first one. And there was a moment where Ian and I were sitting, waiting to get called into an exam, and we were having a conversation. And I'm sure if you watched the video or the movie, the subtitles would say inaudible when I spoke because I couldn't tell what I said. Probably wasn't important, so they just hushed me. But um, Yeah,
Interesting.
that's my claim to fame. I was on the Somm documentary for. You have to look real close because it was pre-beard and glasses, so I don't look like myself, but I was there.
Yeah. Well, great. Well, your main focus, it seems these days, is champagne. And that's how we connected. And you have the champagnehappyhour.com where folks can
Hmm.
join the club and get 2 bottles of champagne every month. And what I love is that they're not the same old champagne names that people are probably used to seeing. No offense to things like Krug and Laurent
Hmm.
Perrier and beyond, but these are small production houses. And we're going to actually talk about one of them, Domaine Mea. And I did a little research on your website, which is fabulous, on the story behind the wine. But tell me why you chose this champagne house to share with our listeners.
Domaine Mea was a champagne that we found on our very first trip over to the region when we were starting the business, and we met with Franck and Sophie and just fell in love with them. We fell in love with their wines. They've become very good friends of ours, but also their champagnes are just absolutely fantastic. And it's a really interesting sort of dynamic about what we do with smaller growers because this is a producer, Domaine Mea, that they're in a Grand Cru village of Louvois. And so if you study, like we did for the court, you've got your flashcards and you memorize all 17 Grand Cru villages and you think, wow, those are special and they're everywhere. This is the only producer that comes to the United States from this Grand Cru village. There's 17 Grand Cru villages, only one coming from this. So it's sort of a unique thing. So it's sort of like fun for those nerdy people they're like, oh yeah, I've heard of that village, but I've never tasted it. So it's kind of fun in that sense. Sophie is the winemaker. And she took over from her mother. So she's a second generation female winemaker, fifth generation for the
Amazing.
family. Amazing. They're all organically farmed. This is a brut nature, so no dosage added, so 0 grams per liter of residual sugar, which makes it sort of hip and cool. When we're talking about checking boxes, this champagne checks a lot of the boxes. But for me, it all starts and ends with what's in the glass. That's the most important thing. And so you can have all the story and the coolest labels. Like this one has a really cool label. It's got
It
a
is.
piece of chalk with balloons, like, but the balloons are great bunches. Like it's just like the art's really well done. But if you can have all of that, and if the champagne's not great, it's not that interesting. But for me, it's great. So that's
Yeah.
sort of why I chose it because you said let's drink champagne. I said let's choose something that we're going to enjoy.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And speaking of what's in the glass, before we get to tasting this delicious champagne, what do you think of my glass? And what is your preferred glass to enjoy champagne with?
I love your glass. That's a very standard sort of champagne glass you would find in the Champagne region. So a lot of people would look at it and say, "Oh, maybe that looks like white wine or something." That to me is a champagne glass. This I poured a flute just because I hate myself. This is the worst glass to drink out of. Um, but I tend to drink out of just a universal white glass. This is Zalto Universal or
Okay.
AP. I don't know what they call it. I have a lot of different glasses that I tend to drink out of. I don't have a brand that I like. I like shapes, and this is the shape that I.
Okay. Great. So, Brut Nature, zero
Hmm.
dosage. So, there's
Hmm.
no added sugar in the
Hmm.
dosage process here. So, this obviously is going to be bone dry for real. And tell me a little bit about, a lot of people, if they're not super champagne nerds,
Hmm.
maybe like us, might not realize that there are red grapes in making champagne. So, tell me about the grapes they use and how it affects the style of this one.
Yeah, so this is 90% Pinot Noir, and all of you probably have realized that this is not a red wine. Pinot Noir is a red grape, and the quick thing about how Pinot Noir is red is all grapes, save a few, but we won't get into it. All grapes have clear juice inside. Go to the grocery store and grab a red grape and squeeze it. Clear juice will come out. So to make red wine, you squeeze that juice, but then leave it in contact with the skins, and the juice will extract the colors and the flavors and tannins and everything from the skin. But if you quickly squeeze the juice and remove it from the skin so that it just has just the juice and you ferment it, you can get clear juice from red grapes.
Yeah, and this nose, this on this, you get that toasty, bready note that champagne is
Hmm.
known for. I think I read that this is aged on the lease for 4 years. Is that correct? So
Hmm.
you're really going to
Yeah.
get that note here.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
There's some barrel fermentation, which allows oxygen to sort of incorporate itself into the wine a little bit as well. So that gives you some breadth on the palate. And then the lees aging, lees are a really magical thing. And we just think, oh, lees aging, but people don't really realize that lees will slough off during their sort of, it's really not sexy to say, but lees are dead yeast cells. Fermentation happens. We leave the yeast in the bottle. And while that's happening and aging for 4 years, those lees are sloughing off amino acids, proteins, all sorts of things that add to weight, body, flavor. There's 320 different things that it can add to the champagne in different levels. And so that's why the longer you leave something on the lees, that the deeper, richer, nuttier, creamier characteristics that you get out of the champagne. And 4 years is, I mean, enough to really work some
Yeah.
magic in this glass.
It's really beautiful.
Hmm.
Lovely.
Yeah.
And what I love about a well-made champagne or champagne method sparkling wine is that these bubbles are so gentle that they just kind
Hmm.
of, I don't want to say evaporate, but they just really settle on your palate so wonderfully.
Hmm.
And that to me, when I'm doing classes or whatever and telling people, you can tell a sparkling wine that's not well made because it's sometimes assaulting. You know what I mean? The bubbles are just so aggressive.
Yeah.
It's you get the bubbles and then it just kind of lays on the palate so well.
Yeah, champagne to me is not necessarily about the bubbles. Yes, that's what makes it champagne, is that it goes through secondary fermentation in bottle, and that allows for the bubbles to be in the wine. That's why people drink out of flutes, because you can't really see, but because of the
Yeah.
bubble, because it's a little frosty, because the bubbles are trickling up the side, right? That's what makes champagne fun for a lot of people. I had a great Champenois winemaker tell me once, he said, to make great champagne, you make wine and then you add the bubbles. That's a gross oversimplification of the process. But to me, it says if you don't have great wine, it doesn't matter what you do to it. And that's why a lot of times people will chill something down really cold and put it in a flute or put it in a chambong and chug it really fast, because then you don't have to taste what you've got in your glass. But if you've got a really great champagne, you can put it in a glass like this. You can put it in something bigger. You can let it warm up or go flat. And if your champagne isn't good when it's the same temperature you drink your red or white wine, or it's not good once the bubbles are gone, then you probably didn't have good champagne to start with. And that's sort of the mentality that I always go with, is I don't really fuss. I know if you look at my Instagram, you see all the glassware and the temperature and all of these things. And I think that's really just to illuminate the point that we take champagne way too seriously sometimes. And I get it. There's a bottle, it's got a different cap on it, it makes a noise, there's pressure, you could put an eye out, there's all sorts of things that go, do I saber, do I not saber, all of these different things that go into drinking a bottle of champagne. Is it a celebration? Is this the right bottle for my mom's birthday or whatever it is, right? And for me, it's Tuesday morning and we're drinking a bottle of champagne, and I haven't been struck by lightning. Your house hasn't, like, the wind
Burnt
hasn't blown
down.
it down. Yeah. Like, nobody's coming after us because we're drinking champagne out of white wine glasses or bongs on a Tuesday morning. And I think that to me is what's the most important thing, is that we realize that you drink champagne the same way you would drink any wine. If you would drink a
Mhm.
wine side on your patio out of a plastic tumbler, put a champagne in it and do it. You'll enjoy it exactly the same.
I love that. And now you brought up temperature. And I used to work at Astor Wines in New York City way
Hmm.
back in the day when I was just getting into wine. And I remember wine buyers saying that a lot of times they would evaluate and taste their white wines and maybe the champagne as well warm, because you can tell an inferior wine when it's warm right away. If it's a good wine,
Hmm.
it's going to taste good warm, but it'll taste better
Yeah.
with the chill on it. Um,
Yeah.
Proper temperature, usually people are probably keeping this in a kitchen refrigerator,
Hmm.
unless they're geeks like us and they have the wine fridge.
Right.
So coming out of the fridge at like 39 degrees, maybe 40
Hmm.
degrees. What do you think about that temperature, or what do you think is the sweet spot for serving champagne?
I don't like mine straight out of the refrigerator. I think it's too cold. I generally take my bottle of champagne out 10 to 15 minutes before I'm planning on having my first sip. Sometimes you can't wait that long and you've got to drink it cold. But I think, the normal person will open a bottle of champagne and it will last long enough that it will come up to temperature out of the refrigerator. For me personally, I like mine 50 degrees Fahrenheit, where that's just slightly below most people's cellar temperature, and then let it warm up in the glass. I don't use an ice bucket. I generally don't like to put a bottle of wine on an ice bucket to sort of keep it cool, mostly because I finish champagne before it warms up. But you said warm, and I think, warm for most people is probably that 50 to 60 degree temperature. I don't think, I know you weren't, and I'm never saying when I like a champagne warm or white wine warm, it's not 80 degrees. It's,
Yeah,
warmer than
true,
you would think, I think is the
true.
thing. And people are scared of that. And yeah, I mean, I'm not a scientist. Like I said, I went to school for English and philosophy. So that means I took zero math classes in college. That's how my brain works. But, the science of it all is basically that molecules move faster when they're warmer than colder. So when you get something ice cold, it's tight. It's, you're not smelling anything, you're not tasting anything as much. As the wine warms up, you taste more esters, you get more sort of out of the wine. And I think that's why you and I and other people tend to like things just a touch warmer, because you do get more out of it. And I have these two glasses because I tend to like to do just sort of goofy little experiments and just say, this is the same bottle, poured at the same time, let them warm up, taste them side by side, see what you think. And I was doing that just a little bit beforehand because, I wanted to
Why
make sure
not?
that I was ready to go. Um, and it's interesting when you taste them side by side out of any two glasses. Pick a white wine glass and a champagne flute. Pick a red Solo cup and a whatever that cup with a glass straw thing that you had was called. I
Right.
don't know what that is, but taste
I
them
don't
side by
know.
side and you'll see
Right.
the difference. And I don't think that for me, it's something where I'm like, you have to like one or the other. It's
Hmm.
about experimenting. And I think wine, there's so much less now, but when we first started, there's so much gatekeeping. There's so many people telling you what you should and shouldn't do and what you should and shouldn't like. And as someone who spends a lot of time drinking on the internet, I come off as an influencer, but I'm not really trying to influence anyone to drink a specific wine or do a specific thing. It's the influence that I'm trying to assert over people is learn your palate,
Hmm.
trust your palate. The most important thing about wine is, do you like it? I could give
Right.
you a $300 bottle of champagne that's the best champagne. But if you don't like it, then there's no point. Like, why would you bother drinking something you don't like? And so, my experiments and my sort of ambition in life, if I can leave a mark, by someone watching a minute video of me on the internet, is just to make them think, wow, we should try something different. I should try that. I don't know why I always drink my champagne in a flute. I guess that's just what I was told. That's what my mom and my grandma did. Therefore, that's what I'm going to do. And sort of it's breaking that thought pattern of I have to do it this way because that's what I've been told, or that's what always happens.
Right.
Or the one time I had champagne was at Uncle Carl's wedding and they put it in a flute. So I guess that's what I'm supposed to do. Right. And if you can just sort of break out of that a little bit and say, I'm going to try something new, I'm going to experiment a little bit. Um, and maybe you'll learn something new, or maybe you'll say the flute's the best and, Garth and Lori are crazy, and that's fine. But at least you tried it out and you know why you like something. That to
Right.
me is the most important.
Yeah, I don't know if you'll approve, but my my daughter and I started this little video series on Instagram once a week. I was reading an article from the American Association of Wine Economics on
Hmm.
LinkedIn, and they were listing the top 10 sparkling wines in the US.
Hmm.
And I was kind of aghast at what the top 10 were
Hmm.
because it was not what I expected, or maybe what you and I might place as
Sparkling
the,
wines.
yes, sparkling
Okay.
wines.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
So,
I don't know why I did the air quotes, but.
so I was kind of looking at it, and I was my daughter's 22, and so she's a Gen Z, and I was like, "Oh my god, I can't believe like Barefoot is the top 10." And she's like, "Oh my god, mom, I love Barefoot. That's like one of my favorites." And I was like, "Okay, maybe I'm being a little bit of a wine snob here,
Hmm.
just not having tasted these wines, really, just, knowing them by name." So we've been working our way through the top 10.
Hmm.
Some of them I'm like, "Okay, this changes my mind a little bit. It's better than I expected,
Hmm.
that I had in my mind." Some of them that we both said we would never put in our mouth again.
Hmm.
So it is interesting when you challenge your assumptions, because especially for us going through, our SOM certifications and
Hmm.
training, I mean, you wouldn't dare throw out, Andre or Cooks into the into the mix of the
Right.
conversation. But if we remember when we got started, I mean, I think Boone's Farm was the first wine I ever tried. So,
Hmm.
why am I to be a snob that these might be, popular because of price or taste, etc. But I think four of them are Prosecco, which is interesting.
Hmm.
And only one of the top 10, Veuve, is an actual champagne.
Right.
What Do you think this is mostly a price situation? Is champagne more intimidating? Uh, what do you kind of think about that?
I think it's a lot of things. I mean, I think it does start with price and availability. This champagne is not 14.99, and let me see if it says it on the back. No, there's about 5,000 bottles of this made. So
Oh
that means
wow.
it can't be at every grocery store. It can't be, floor stacked at Costco. Just by pure, principles of supply and demand, it just can't be. And so Domaine Mea may be the best champagne in the world, but only 5,000 people, 10,000 people a year are going to find out, because you just don't have the ability. Veuve Clicquot makes 30 million bottles a year. So that's part of why I think it makes that list. And price, obviously, when you're just grabbing a bottle to take over to a friend's house, you don't necessarily always grab the 70, 80, $90 bottle of wine. You'll take something that, is easy to drink and you can have a conversation about, because we're not all wine snobs. We don't all want to sit around and talk about, whatever wine snobs talk about when they drink wine. And, people ask me all the time, they go, "Oh, do you think that Prosecco is a this or that? It's a competitor? Do you think?" I love that, because you've got to start drinking sparkling wine sometime. The first wine that I really remember drinking a lot of was Yellowtail. I had a buddy in
Mm,
college, and the goal every night was to buy the cheapest bottle of wine so we could get the drunkest. And so it was a Magnum of Yellowtail. I think it was like 2.99 at the time or something like that. And so every night we'd switch off who bought it, and we drank a lot of Yellowtail. And you go back to that wine now, and it's probably not very good, but you have to start somewhere. We
yeah.
don't all just wake up drinking Dom Perignon vintage. I mean, maybe some people do, but most people don't. And so you have to like kind of build your taste. And that's why we do these experiments. And that's why we, do it with champagne. I always do it with champagne because that's my love, but do it with Prosecco, do it with your Barefoot, do it with whatever you want to do. And sort of just like I was saying before, learn.
Hmm.
And I think, to your point about trying these wines, if you're a wine professional, if you're a sommelier, if you're a writer, if you're a podcaster, if you're anything, and you haven't tasted these or experienced these and you're actively going at them, I think you're doing a disservice to everyone, because if you don't understand what these wines taste like and why people are drinking them, then I think you're just sort of, I don't know, this is making me sound old, but a poser, right? You're just sort of saying like, "Oh,
Yeah.
Yellowtail is bad." Have you tried it? Have you
Right.
drank Barefoot versus La Marca versus Veuve Clicquot like you're doing? Then you can actually know what you're talking about. And I think that's also the hard part of being a wine professional, is that you can't know everything. And that's why people
Hmm.
take these certifications like the Court of Master Sommeliers, because to do that you have to have a depth of knowledge um in so many different things. And I think that sort of like brings you up to the level where you can start talking about wine in an intelligent way. But I also think that's what makes it so scary, right? We're sitting
Yeah.
here, I'm saying you've got to drink everything and try everything before you can even know anything. And that's a form of gatekeeping that I don't want to put on anyone. It's basically just know what you like, find what you like, and then sort of take that path. If you taste this and go, it's too this or too that, then go to the wine store, go visit you at Astor, 10 years ago and say, "Hey, I had this bottle of whatever and it was too," and don't be scared to use dumb words. It was too harsh. It was too fruity. It was too alcoholic, right? Those aren't words that we'd use as wine professionals, but if someone said them to us, we'd know what that means. And you'd be able to
Right.
steer them in that direction. And then, you can always turn around at the end and look back at your path and say, I followed this path to get where I am now, and my palate, I know I like this.
Yeah.
You gotta kiss a few frogs along the way, but wine is fun because along the way, even the frogs are fairly tasty.
Right. And it's all about trusting your own taste. And I feel like that's what you and I, in our roles and what we do in wine, are there to support people
Hmm.
in having that confidence and being able to find what they love and then ask for it when they're out at a store or a restaurant, that sort of thing. And then champagne has so many different styles, even within the same producer. And I love that we're
Hmm.
tasting another selection here. Tell
Hmm.
me a little bit about the second one. And I know that the grape varietal composition is very different as well. Let's talk about how these taste different based on that.
Yeah, and so I chose these two from the same house because there's Le Griot and Signature that we're drinking today, and the Signature is sort of the signature of the southern portion of the vineyards that this winery owns, and so they're in Louvois, as I mentioned, which is contiguous with Bouzy and Ambonnet. So there's a lot of red fruit influence in the first wine that we drank, and the second wine that we drank is 30% Pinot Noir and 70% Chardonnay, and that's because, and you'll see the compass on the label that sort of
Yeah, they're
has it's pointing.
beautiful.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
compass pointing north, and that is an indication of it. These are the wines from the northern part of the holdings that the family has. So they're vineyards up and around Lude. You say north, it's like 10 minutes driving, but in a long time ago, it was a lot further by horse and up over the hill. So this is the northern portion of their vineyard holdings, and it's Chardonnay dominated. So it's the same winemaker, it's the same vintage, it's different grape varietals, and in different sort of proportions. And to me, that's really interesting because you get to see this picture of this house where it's not the same. It's not all just Pinot Noir. It doesn't all have the same signature. The wines are very, very different. And you kind of get a sense that champagne doesn't always taste the same. I love doing this is a house, but I love sometimes doing like a Blanc de Blanc tasting. So a Blanc de Blanc is generally 100% Chardonnay or at least 100% white grapes. And if you do it from different houses and different villages, people will walk away and go, wow, those were so wildly different. Because sometimes people will ask the question, what does Blanc de Blanc taste like? And it's like, you can't answer that question because they're so dramatically different, even in the same style, from house, style, vintage, village. There's so many different things that can happen in Champagne. And that to me is why I say all the time that Champagne is the most exciting wine region in the world, because within the same house, within the same village, within the same vintage, you can get dramatically different expressions of terroir, expressions of vintage, expressions of grape. The winemaker has an influence. There's so many different things that you can do when making champagne. And nothing against the big houses, but the big houses have always pushed for, and it's less now, but in the past, especially house style consistency. We want the champagne to taste the same every year, all the time. I had a representative from a big house once say, we want you to like push the door of your favorite retail store and grab a bottle, and every year it tastes the same. And consistency is to be applauded, I think, but that's Coca-Cola. It's the same every time. It's listening to your favorite band, but on CD. It's the same every time. And I think champagne, you can get so many different expressions. And even the same wine, the signature this year and next year will be dramatically different. They'll have some of
Mm.
the same fingerprints, but they'll be dramatically different because the vineyards give you different things every year. And I think that's the joy of small houses. The other reason that I say Champagne is the most exciting wine region in the world is because we're in this big generation shift right now. There's many, many, many of these growers, for one reason or another, they're passing it along to the kids. The kids are starting to work in the winery. The new ideas are happening. There's new ways of farming, of winemaking, new things that people are doing, and so sort of that old generation is starting to retire, and the new generation's coming in, and so there's all this excitement and all this experimentation that had never been happening before. And so you go now to Champagne. And you walk into a wine bar on a Tuesday night and people are drinking from, bottles of labels you've never seen before and villages you've never tried before and great blends that you've never like thought to blend together. And you really get this just like really fun, cool, exciting experiment that's happening in Champagne right now in a region that's been around forever and has all these laws and rules. And you think of, caviars and Bentleys and it's and wingtips,
Hmm.
and it's not. It's young kids in sneakers drinking in the street with their friends, but they're doing really, really, really cool things. And I'm just like really happy to be a part of.
That's exciting. So, with the predominance of Chardonnay in this one, how would you, for people that are listening, thinking about these two, how would you
Mhm.
describe the difference in taste?
Yeah, I think for me, Chardonnay always tends to have a little bit more linear quality to it. The acid and structure tends to show a lot more. Um, this being from the northern part of the Champagne region, it does have a little bit more weight and body to it, and I think that's something that people are starting to do in Chardonnay as well, is a little bit longer in the vineyards before harvest, so you pick up a little bit more of that fruit and that weight. Um, to me, I think that the Pinot Noir has that red fruit, that floral note,
Hmm.
that depth, that like sort of breadth on your palate. You taste it on the sides of your tongues and the side of your tongue and the back of your palate as you're going through. And to me, the Chardonnay is just a little bit more linear, a little bit more straight, but still has that sort of like fruity, nutty characteristic as well.
Yeah, they're both delicious, but that's a really great way of comparing.
Hmm.
And I mean, we're all about, my husband's a chef, so we're all about wine and food, being
Hmm.
part of the team.
Hmm.
And that excites me, having them
Yeah.
together and finding great pairings, but they don't have to all be fancy, like you said, right? I mean, you
Mm-mm.
can have champagne on a Tuesday. So what would be something unusual that you love to enjoy with champagne that maybe people haven't thought of as a great pairing?
Yeah, I mean, the interesting to me thing to me about champagne is that it really does pair with almost everything. The only thing it doesn't really pair with is really sweet. So stay away from desserts. But I mean, the classic is potato chips or French fries or anything fried or salty makes really, really great partners with champagne. But I like it with Moroccan food. I like it with
Mm.
something that's slightly spicy. I love it with meat. You do like a steak frites and a bottle of champagne, and you might just be blown away. Because think about, you've got the fatty meat of the steak frite, maybe the sauce that you put on top, maybe you put béarnaise on top, and you've got the French fries, maybe you've got a little salad with the vinaigrette on it or something like that. All of those things will pair differently with a glass of champagne in a way that you would think, oh, this needs a Bordeaux or a Super Tuscan or something like that because it's red meat. But champagne does some really interesting things, and a lot of pairings, meat particularly, because we're talking about it, the red wine and the meat that will match each other, and sometimes the champagne, because it's lighter, will come in and lift up the flavors of the beef in a different way. And so instead of having those big rich flavors, I've had champagne and beef pairings where the beef almost ends up tasting floral and
Ooh,
like exotic, because it's picking up different notes in that dish. So
now I'm getting
again,
hungry.
I know.
Thanks a
I,
lot, Garth.
Again, I think it's, yeah, tacos would be great. Maybe we'll have
Yeah,
tacos with the rest of the bottle for lunch today. But I think it's another one of those things where the freedom to experiment is what you should take away from it. Is you should taste a glass of champagne and say, this will go with whatever I'm eating next, right? Like if you had a friend coming over and they said, oh, I'm picking up takeout food and I'm going to bring it over for dinner, and you don't know where they're picking it up from, you can open a bottle of champagne and be guaranteed that it's going to go with whatever they bring over. And that to me is the versatility of champagne,
I
unlike any other
agree.
wine.
Yeah. And speaking of champagne and happy hour, which I know is one of your favorite things, tell me about the Champagne Happy Hour Club. How does it work? If folks are interested in signing up, what does that look like?
Yeah, Champagne Happy Hour is a club. When we started importing champagne a couple years ago, people started asking us, "How do we find your champagne? How do we get your champagne?" And we realized there was a demand for people really wanting, to have more champagne in their life. And so we started the club. It's called Champagne Happy Hour, and every month you get 2 bottles of champagne shipped to you. And what we do is much like we're doing here today, we focus on one producer. Every month you get one producer. The next month you'll get a different producer, and it's always changing, and it's always fun and exciting. We go back to champagne all the time to find new producers to put in the club. And it's really just, again, about experimenting and finding new favorites. And every month it's the most exciting thing, because people will write and say, oh, we tried that rosé. It was the best. It's our new favorite rosé. And so it's really simple. You go to Champagne Happy Hour, you sign up, and you come along the journey with us. And every month 2 bottles show up, and we have a good time. And, sometimes we send out, little treats and presents, and we do trips. We just got back from Champagne with some of our club members, and we did some really, really fun, exciting things. So it's just sort of building a community around champagne, and we do that by drinking the same thing together every month. My goal, our goal, is to really just make sure that people are drinking as much good champagne as they can, and you don't have to just find what's on sale or on a floor stack in your local grocery store. I mean, we're not all lucky enough to, I mean, I live in Chicago and I can see, like, out my window 3 great wine shops, but sometimes people have more limited access to the really great champagnes. And so we tried to make it so we ship to 95% of the zip codes in the United States. So everybody
That's
can have
awesome.
great champagne. Yeah.
Love it. Now, I know that neither of us are doctors, but did you see the recent study that came out that said drinking champagne lowers your risk for cardiac events?
Sudden cardiac events are
Yes.
reduced by drinking champagne. Yes, I saw that. About 30,000 people sent it to me in my DMs, which is great. Um, no, it's an interesting thing, because I remember once seeing a report that apples could give you cancer. And so,
Jeez.
it was something about the wax coating, or, but it was
Right.
basically an apple a day keeps the doctor away, and then there's this. And so you take it all with a little bit of a grain of salt. But I think this is probably the most accurate study that's ever been done in the history of the world, is that if you drink champagne, you're going to be happier, you're going to be smarter, you're going to live longer. I don't know if any of that's true, but
I love it. I wonder if
you
it
can.
has to do with the amino acids that you were talking about. That is what makes champagne different than, say a glass of Barolo or a
Mhm.
Chardonnay, potentially. So I wonder, maybe a Chardonnay that's aged on the lees or
Yeah.
something might
The
have some
article
similar.
wasn't yeah, the article wasn't as specific about what particular things in the champagne made it better than,
Yeah.
like you say, a glass of Barolo. Um, but yeah, maybe that's what it is. I'm just going to keep drinking champagne, and maybe someday we'll find out.
Well, I know folks want to definitely find you on Instagram because your videos are amazing, educational and fun at the same
Mhm,
time.
mhm.
So if folks want to check those out and follow you, what's the best place for them to find you?
I'm just Garth Hodgdon on Instagram, and it started with one bottle review where you drink an entire bottle of champagne and then do a review. And the first couple, if you go back to the beginning, you get pretty drunk drinking a bottle of champagne sometimes. And so I've sped up the speed at which I drink a bottle of champagne. So you get through in 8 to 10 minutes, and you can still talk at the end, before it all kicks in. So it's a fun
Nice.
thing. And we, like you said, we do things about temperature and glassware and all sorts of things. So yeah, Garth_Hodgdon on
Perfect.
Instagram.
Well, this has been amazing. I could talk to you for another hour because there's so much. So we might have to have you back on to talk about champagne. But
Gladly.
thank you for sharing these wines from Domaine Mea with us. ChampagneHappyHour.com. If folks want to join the club, I'll post the
Hmm.
links on my show page. And Garth, just thank you for your time. This has been so much fun. And thank you for allowing me to drink champagne on a Tuesday at noon.
I mean, listen, we have free will to do the things that we enjoy. So Tuesday morning champagnes, I think we should all be doing it more often. Lori, thank
Me
you for
too.
having me. I appreciate it. I feel like we just scratched the surface. So let's drink champagne together again sometime.
I would love that. Cheers.
All right. Cheers. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks a lot. Awesome.
Yeah.